right. Hey, guys, okay. Guys, I told you, my whole goal here is to tear down the wall of Christianity, okay? And I got this clip, and I want you to go back and watch it and see it for yourself. You can watch the whole thing if you have the stomach to be able to stomach the vexing that you will experience from watching this thing. But I'm queuing it up. It's about 49 minutes long, about 50, just say 50 minutes long. And I'm going into the last 10 minutes of this man's sermon or the program or whatever from this church out of Florida. This was given to me by a guy who I was a friend of when I was in Christianity. And he told me since I came into the truth that this is one of the hardest preaching that he's ever experienced from Christianity, like the most challenging. And I said, okay. And it happened to be about 1 John chapter 2, verse 3 to 6. This guy goes over. I said, okay, hey, I know that verse. That verse is my favorite verse just to kind of really give you an indicator who are his. If you're the children of Yah or you're the children of the devil. This allows you to know if you know him or if you don't know him, you're just a liar. So I said, okay, let me watch what this guy has to say about this stuff. And this is from a Christian perspective. And just like I used to do back in my days of playing football, breaking down, watching film, rewind, slow, and so I want you guys to hear this stuff because this guy's a no-namer. I don't even know who this guy is. But this is what Christianity do at its finest. They literally teach stuff that is confused. They just confuse you. It doesn't even make no sense. I literally sat and watched this whole sermon, and I was at the edge of my seat waiting for him to tell us, how do we know that we know him? How do we actually do? Guys, I'm gonna let you hear for yourself. I will stop at key points just so I can emphasize certain things. So let me play the tape. Let's roll the tape.
Not to reduce the gospel to something less than what it is. You see, those who truly know Christ and who have experienced his real salvation will not abuse the grace of God that has been granted to them, but instead it becomes a means and a motivation to live a life that is pleasing to the God who's loved them and saved them. And those who use grace as a license to sin reveal that they do not know him at all. They've not experienced the real salvation that sets us free from sin's captivity and gives us a desire to actually live lives that are holy and pleasing. If we know him, we must not sin. But if we sin, do not despair. You have an advocate. You have a propitiation. Thirdly, if we know him, we will keep his commandments. If we know him, we'll keep his commandments. I love this letter of 1 John. It's so simple, but its simplicity is what makes it so delicate.
Listen to this. And guys, remember, this is towards the end. When you hear the first, he's literally breaking down 1 John chapter 2, from verse 1 all the way to 6 or going on to 8. And he spent most of the time in the first 2 verses talking about how Jesus was an advocate, how he's an advocate. Spend more time in that, in the propitiation of sin and things of that nature. And then he gets towards the last 10 minutes. This is the punchline. You're waiting for the punchline. But then he comes here and talks about it's so simple. If you know him, you will keep his commandment. And he talks about how simple it is. And guys, I'm telling you, it is that simple. If you have eyes to see, see. And if you have ears to hear, hear. So these are the people that's going to be able to see this stuff. But man, watch how this man twists this thing up. I mean, I'm telling you, he chops it up. And by the time you look at it, you don't even know what the heck it is. He took something that was so simple and made it complicated. But I'm going to let you guys, I'm going to roll the tape. Here we go.
I love when I can, in a very complex way, weasel my way out of what the Bible says.
Okay. You hear what he said? Guys, I'm going to rewind this, guys, because I want you guys here. I'm going to rewind. I'm going to just go back just a little bit. He talks about how simple. If you know him, you will keep his commandment. And he talks about how he prefers it to be complicated so he can weasel his way out. Do you guys hear me? This man is about to just pull the linchpin on Christianity and talk about the true heart and how wicked Christianity really is and how they try to make it so confusing so that they can weasel their way out and not love the Most High. Guys, I'm going to let you hear. you can hear it from his mouth. And this is Christianity. This guy was at least honest enough. And I don't know if that even makes sense. That's an oxymoron. But he was honest enough to show you and expose how they think. Here we go again.
To them, but instead it becomes a means and a motivation to live a life that is pleasing to the God who's loved them and saved them. And those who use grace as a license to sin reveal that they do not know him at all. They've not experienced the real salvation that sets us free from sin's captivity and gives us a desire to actually live lives that are holy and pleasing. If we know him, we must not sin. But if we sin, do not despair. You have an advocate. You have a propitiation. Thirdly, if we know him, we will keep his commandments. If we know him, we'll keep his commandments. I love this letter for John. It's so simple, but its simplicity is what makes it so devastating to people like me. I love when I can, in a very complex way, weasel my way out of what the Bible says. And you do too. Because if I'm not convicted, you don't have to be either. But John is so clear. He says, if you love him, you'll keep his commandments. It's that simple. If you know him, this is how you'll know you know him. You actually do what he says. We say, isn't it more complicated, John? Can't you make this more complicated so we don't understand what you're saying? No. It's as simple as this. If you know him, you'll do what he says. Look, chapter 2, verse 3. By this, we know that we've come to know him if we keep his commandments. No, John, no. I know that I've come to know him because I like to study theology. It's really interesting. No, John, I know that I've come to know him because I read my Bible. John, I know that I come to know him because I come to church. John, I know that I've come to know. John says, no. Yeah, Christians do all of those things, but here's how you'll know you've come to know him.
Guys, this man is hidden right now. He's hidden. He says it's not about going to seminary, about going to church. This guy is he's telling, this is true, but he never tells you how to keep the commandments. He never. But I'm going to let you hear for yourself, and I'm encouraging you, go back. But before I go, I just want to read something to you. This guy is just hitting it right on nail. It reminds me of a letter that in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 16, it says this. Let me start at verse 15. It says, and it account that the long suffering of our Lord and salvation, even our beloved brother Paul, according to the wisdom given unto him, had written unto you, as also in all his epistles, speaking in them the things which are some things hard to be understood, which they that are unlearned and unstable rest as they do also the other scriptures unto their own destruction. They wrestle the word. This is what he's talking about. They confuse it. They twist it up and make it confusing. That's what he's saying. To their own destruction. You guys are listening to this man. He's saying it's not about that. It's about keeping the commandments. But he never tells you. I'm going to let him finish. I'm going to keep my mouth shut and speak at the end of this stuff. Here we go. If I can help it, please.
But John, I had this amazing experience when I was 14 at church, and I came forward and I was crying. And John says, no, here's how you know him. Do what he says. You do what he says. Look, verse 6, whoever says he abides in him ought to walk in the same way in which he walked. Do you know him? Are you in a living relationship with him? Do you have this fellowship we saw last week? Are you united to him where you're sharing in the life of God? If so, then you ought to walk like he walked. Your life ought to basically look a lot like what Jesus' life looked like. A life of compassion, a life of mercy, a life of integrity, a life of generosity, a life of graciousness, a life of holiness and obedience. Do you abide in him? Does he abide in you? Do you have this life? Then this is what it looks like. You basically walk like he walked. And you can say like Paul to the people who are watching you, hey, walk like me as I walk like Jesus.
This guy talks about the way you do this is walk like Jesus walked. Walk like Paul walked. But how did they walk, Mr. So-called pastor? This is a so-called wicked-ass pastor, and he doesn't tell you, but I'm going to tell you what he's not telling you, and I'm going to let him finish it. But let me tell you how Jesus walked. Jesus says this in John chapter 15, verse 10 says this, If you keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love. Did he not talk about abide? Abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandment and abide in his love. These things I have spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you and that your joy might be full. So guys, this is it. Keeping the command. Jesus kept his Father's commandment, and he tells us to also do the same thing, to keep his commandments. So guys, that's what it comes down, keeping the commandments. But let's keep hearing this guy. He won't point you back to the law and the prophets. He's going to point you back to something confusing. But let's hear. I literally was on the edge of my seat listening to this whole sermon, waiting for him to give us the answer.
4, whoever says I know him but does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth's not in him. This is sobering, isn't it? But he says this. Why does he say this? So that you may not sin. So that you might be shaken out of your complacency. So that, like me, you might sit up this week at some point and say, oh my gosh, I've forgotten Christianity 101, that Jesus saved me from sin, and I should stop doing it. And I should mourn over it, and I should weep over it. When I see it, I should confess it and seek to put it to death with the truth of the gospel. You see, what John understands is that when we truly know him, we are transformed by him. When you truly know him, you cannot be the same. That's how John can say, if you know him, you'll keep his commandments, because John knows when you know him, you cannot be the same. It changes you. A relationship with him, it changes. You have the living power of God within you. That doesn't leave you the same. It leaves you looking like somebody different than the world that doesn't have the living God inside of them. It begins to look like a real salvation, a real Christianity. Jesus says to those of us who don't keep his commandments in Luke 6.
So when I first was watching this video for the first time, man, I was, my friend gave me this video. I said, I'm going to check this thing out. And I was literally giving him the benefit of the doubt. And he was talking, man, this is some of my favorite passage in the Bible is 1 John chapter 2. Talking about if you know him, you will keep his commandments. If you don't know him, those who say they know him and keep not his commandments are liars, and the truth is not in him. So I'm like, okay, I want to hear what he has to say. And I'm talking about he's hitting it. He's talking about it's not about going to seminary. It's not going to church on Sundays. It's not about, I did my Bible study where it's about if you just obey him, if you keep his commandment. And I'm telling you, the whole time, it's about, 50 minutes long. And I'm going into it. I'm sitting down. I'm at the edge of my seat and I'm looking, and then he started getting to the part, if you know, it's real simple. It's real simple. If you know him, you will keep his commandment. And then he comes in and says, but he wants it to be complicated because he wants to weasel away. I'm like, what? What do you mean? I said, okay. And I'm still pushing through. I'm pushing through because I see there's more time. And I'm watching it. And at the end of the day, he left me with nothing. And I felt like he just left me hanging. Like it literally gave me spiritual blue balls. But anyway, let's just keep listening to this stuff.
He says, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I tell you? He says, it's Christianity 101. If I'm the Lord, you should do what I tell you. You should not sin. But if you do sin, you have an advocate, you have a propitiation, but don't forget, you should stop sinning.
How do you stop sinning? What is sin? It'll be nice to know what sin is so that we stop sinning. What is it? If you go to 1 John chapter 3, verse 4, it tells you the transgression of the law is sin. Sin is the transgression of the law. He won't tell you that. And then so if transgression of the law, then what is the law? Guys, you keep listening.
Jesus said, go and sin no more to the woman caught in adultery. And we have somehow turned it into go and sin some more. We know that the love of God has been perfected in us if we walk in the ways that Jesus walked. This is what he says in verse 5. Whoever keeps his word, in him truly the love of God is perfected. Now this could speak of our love for God is perfected if we keep his word, or it could mean his love for us. It's hard to say, and scholars are divided on this. But I think it's intentionally ambiguous, and both actually are true.
He says it's ambiguous. He says this, the scholars, who cares what the scholar says? If you're born again, you're going to have a natural desire to want to keep the commandments of Yah because you love him. It's impossible. I mean, when you have the Holy Spirit in you, you're going to want to keep his commandment. It's not grievous to you. That is an act of love for the Most High. And so when he's talking like this stuff, it causes confusion. And then at the end of the day, you walk away saying, well, hey, I got a propitiation for my sin. I got an advocate. I can keep on sinning. You guys keep listening. I'm not trying to put words in this man's mouth, but this is what he's not saying. And I'm trying to make sure that as you guys see this and you hear me, go back and watch it on your own. And you see it for yourself. And then you may have ears to hear and eyes to see. Because I know even the people that listen to this stuff, if you want to keep staying in your sin, you're not gonna hear what I'm saying. You're gonna get offended by what I said, how I said it, what I said, whatever, and you're just gonna miss the whole point. And that's okay. But those who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, blessed is them.
Keep his word, then the love of God for you is perfected. But what does that mean exactly? If you keep God's love for you has a specific purpose and intention, and that is to transform you. God has set his love on you to change you, to transform you, to morally transform you into a person who's increasingly looking like his son. And whenever you keep his word, it becomes the visible evidence that God's love is being completed, that it's been perfected in you, that it's having its effect because your life is actually different.
Telling the truth right there. If you keep his commandment, it will transform you. Being the renewal of your mind, it will transform you. You put away the old man and here come the new man. Let's keep listening.
At the same time, we know that our love for him has been perfected when we keep his word because Jesus says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. So therefore, if we're keeping his commandments, we can see that our love for him is actually, it's taking real shape. It's actually doing that which it's supposed to do, which is to lead us to obedience. So whether it's our love for God or his love for us, obedience to his word shows us that love is being perfected. Ours for him and his for us. And it is one of the grounds of our assurance of our salvation, a transformed life.
Guys, I'm telling you what he just said right there, you literally have an assurance that you are truly his. You have an assurance that you are truly born again when you have a natural desire to want to keep his commandment. That is not grievous. It's like you look forward to it. I mean, it's like, wow, I get to please my master. What he's saying, and your life will be transformed. You don't even care about how many people hate you, the persecution you go through. It will just give you a peace that passes all understanding when you get to keep the Most High's commandments. But he's not going to tell you how to do it. He will not. At the end of this whole thing, he's going to leave you confused and just leave you hanging. You'll watch.
Just remind you again. If you know him, if you have experienced real salvation, the knowledge of Jesus Christ, your trust is in him, you must not sin. For all the reasons we've seen, you must not sin. Fight it, kill it, put it to death. But if you do sin, do not despair. Look to your advocate, the one who pleads in your defense, whose record is perfect. Look to the propitiation, the one who shed his blood to turn away the wrath of God so that it can be said of you, there's now no condemnation for you whose trust is in Jesus Christ.
I literally went to tell you, if you love him, if you know him, keep his commandments. If you know him, you will keep his commandments. Then he goes in and says, but if you sin, you have an advocate, which is a true statement. But he doesn't tell you what the sin is. He doesn't tell you that. He literally makes it seem like at the end of the day, it's okay if you sin because you have an advocate in Jesus. Just go ahead and sin. And those who are born again don't go on sinning. And if we do, we understand we do have an advocate, but we don't go around looking for sin. We stay far away from sin. But let me just let me let this dude wrap up. Wrap up, so-called pastor, business CEO. Let him wrap up.
Having experienced this transforming work of grace, keep his commandments. Walk in obedience. Let it be one of the means that assures you of your relationship with him. Let your life increasingly look like his, so that when the world looks at you, it says, now that's real. That's different. That's a real salvation. That's something that God has done.
Let's pray, guys. He said it. He says, if you keep his commandment, it is going to literally, the world will see that you're his. He's right. He is absolutely right. But here's the deal. He never tells you how to be obedient. How can you be obedient if you don't have the instructions? Be obedient to what, Mr. Pastor? Be obedient to what? This is what Christianity don't teach. They literally teach you how to hate God and hate your neighbor. The law and the prophets literally give you instructions on how to love Yah and how to love your neighbor. And so this is what he's not saying. But guys, he is just a typical pastor. And this is what pastors all over especially in America, this is what they do. They sit here and teach us nothing. They can hit all the scriptures. I can show you a gay man who can literally hit all the scriptures that say homosexuality is wrong and come out. And when you walk away from it, you will say, oh, I guess it's okay to practice that. I'm not making this up, and I promise you, I'm gonna do a video, and I'm gonna do a breakdown video. But I want to show you guys this stuff. So guys, hey, I'm tearing down the walls of Christianity. I came into this truth, and I refuse to I've told a lot of people to come to Christianity. I remember helping people to come and pray. They say the sinner's prayer. And then I remember they would even ask me, how do I know if I'm saved? Well, hey, time would tell. That's all I could tell them. But now I can tell them, you know how I tell? If you're keeping his commandments. If you keeping his commandments, now I can tell you you're his or not. And so guys, that's how you know you're truly his, if you have a desire to keep his commandment and you're actually keeping his commandments. And that is not grievous to you. It's not like, oh, we have to do that. Oh man, we got to do it. No, you want to do it. You will labor. You will work hard to enter his rest. You will do everything you'll be meditating on his word day and night, because you'll be mindful on how you deal with him, how you deal with the Most High, how you deal with your neighbor, because the commandments give us instructions on how to live life that is right in his eyes. So anyway, I hope this provoke you to really think about what you truly believe and to really look at what Christianity really stands for. Christianity is not of Yah at all. It literally is completely a polar opposite of what's taught in the Bible. You're going to hear pastors be able to quote the scriptures, but they won't lead you back to the word of Yah. So anyway, I hope this provoked thought. I hope that this stimulate thought, and I hope you guys will comment. You can, smash the like button. Hey, and if you don't like it, give me a thumbs down. I'll take that too. I consider that a sack. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy. Shalom, shalom.